Okay, hi, I'm Dr. Sushant Sarang. I'm an occupational therapist, and today we are here to discuss or attend to a topic called sensor integration. At the outset, I would like to thank Autism Connect and all of you for sparing your time to come here and make an attempt to empower yourselves. We, the professionals, we have been striving to give the best to your children. But lately, in the past few years, a new concept is emerging, which is called empowering parents. So, this is an attempt by me and Autism Connect, of course, to empower parents with knowledge. Now, sensory integration is a term which you have been hearing for, since the time you have started therapies. What exactly is sensory integration? Because most of the times people tell you that sensory integration is about giving senses, or there are parents who come to me and say that, oh, we already take the child to the garden. So we are anyways doing a lot of sensory integration. But the problem here is that sensory integration is not only about giving senses or a sensory input. It is about putting these senses to use, bringing about an adaptive response. So that is where the expertise lies, because if it were that simple, then anyways your kid goes to the garden and he has been going to the garden and playing, he has been swinging a lot or jumping a lot, and it would have really helped him, but that does not happen. So let us just understand what is sensor integration. Let us just understand the essence or the crux of sensor integration. So here we go. So this is what I truly believe, that each child is gifted, but some need just a little help to discover their gifts. And we are here to help these kids discover their gifts. As we all know, autism is a neurobehavioral condition, and it primarily has three characteristics. There is impairment in speech and communication, impairment in socialization, and presence of stereotypical repetitive behavior. Along with this, many kids also exhibit what is called sensor integration dysfunction. So now, what is sensor integration? So now, sensor integration is the ability to organize sensory information and put it to use. It is a brain thing. It occurs in the brain. So though there are receptors throughout the body, the actual sensor integration process takes place in the brain. Fine. So we are all aware of the five common senses: vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. As I was saying, that we have our five senses which we commonly are aware of. Now just imagine that you are sitting on a giant wheel with your eyes closed. When you're at the top, are you aware that you are at the top or you are at the bottom? Or are you aware with your eyes closed, and if you are sitting in a giant wheel, whether the giant wheel is moving, not moving? So which sense tells you that? Because your eyes are closed. So it is the vestibular sensory system which tells you about this movement. It tells us about where you are right now, and it tells you about movement. So vestibular sensation is the sensation which tells you whether you are moving, whether you are static, whether you are sitting, standing, sideline, supine, or prone. This is an extremely important sensory system because it connects you to the ground, to what we say as Mother Earth, and this is one of the basic foundational sensory system. Okay, so we are not moving ahead. Are we on? I'm not able to go ahead with the. Yeah, sorry. So now what is the function of the vestibular system? It helps to coordinate eyes, it helps to coordinate both the sides of the body, it maintains the muscle tone, etc. Now, when you are cutting a vegetable, do you really have to look down what you are cutting, or you can cut the vegetable as you watch the TV as well. Or this other picture wherein this lady is combing hair. How does she know exactly where her hand needs to be? Or how does she understand, okay, uh, this is where my hair ends and she stops there? Or when you are writing, most of us, when we write, we don't really have to look at the page. We can look up and we can continue writing. So who tells us where exactly our fingers are? Who tells us where exactly our joints are? Now, this is the proprioceptive sensory system. Proprioception is the system or is the sense which tells you where your joints are. That is also the reason why when you're driving a car, you don't have to look down to see if your foot is on the accelerator or on the brake or on the clutch. It moves right wherever it is supposed to be. What tells your brain where the joint is? It is the proprioceptive system. So the sensor for this proprioceptive system is in the muscles and in the tendons. The vestibular sensory system, which we just spoke of, that sensor is deep in the ears. So on both the sides, we have the vestibular apparatus, and that tells us that picks up the vestibular sensory system or the vestibular input, and this the proprioceptive receptors picks up where the joint exactly is. So now coming back to sensory integration, what exactly is sensory integration? It's a normal process. It occurs in all of us. In children, when this sensory integration is taking place, it is most important because it helps the child to develop normally. When does it start? In fact, there are reports that the sensory system starts acting right after 5.5 weeks of conception. So it's as early as that. The three sensory systems, that is tactile, vestibular, and proprioceptive, are the sensory systems which have already started developing when the child is in the womb. Visual and auditory start later. So that is the reason why vestibular, proprioceptive, and tactile are known as proximal sensory systems, and visual and auditory are known as distal sensory systems. So now if you can see, the senses are the ones which bring in sensory input to the brain. So it's like a computer. Like the computer will work only when you put in the input to the keyboard. So the different senses is our keyboard which gives information to the brain. Now, this information is processed by the brain, mostly by the lower centers, primarily the brainstem and the thalamus, and then we get about this basic um, developmental or the basic uh, developmental aspects like eye movements, posture, balance, tone, etc. Now, this in turn helps us to bring about or develop concentration, organization, learning. So, all the academic skills which we eventually develop are because of these basic lower level systems or functions like eye movements, posture, etc., which in turn are developed with because of an intact sensory system. Now, many a times parents come to me and they tell me that okay, my child is 6 years old and he is not writing, and we have been trying to write. So when you're talking about writing, writing is an ability which is right at top of this pyramid. If you can see academic learning, now this is dependent on far more basic and foundational systems. The most important is the sensory system, which you can see is right at the bottom. So if the child is having sensory integration issues, if his senses are not being integrated properly, he will not develop the middle level things like visual spatial perception, eye hand coordination, etc. And if he does not develop this, he will not develop the academic skills or writing, reading, etc., which the parent is trying to look at. Hence, there is a priority of treatment which occupational therapists generally go about. So, whenever a child comes to us with complaints of, say, handwriting or the child not being paying attention in class. As an occupational therapist, what we do is we first try to do an activity analysis. We try to figure out what are the requirements of this activity. Does it need eye-hand coordination? Does it need attention? Does it need some proximal stability, etc.? Once we figure out that, we try to find out what are the components which are affecting this particular performance. So now these components can be a sensory motor component like tone, power, coordination, etc. Or it can be cognitive like attention, poor attention, or it can be social, that the child just does not understand the purpose and why he should be writing. Uh, So far we have spoken about sensory integration. Just to brief you, sensory integration is a normal process. It occurs in all of us. It is extremely important, especially in the developmental phase, which is up to 7 years. Uh, Up to 7 years of age, the brain is developing. The sensory integration process is most useful for bringing about the foundational development in this particular age group. That is the reason why, if you have heard that the therapists or the doctors always keep on telling you that early intervention is very important. If you start the child's therapies before 7 years, it is most crucial because these systems are still developing. um, However, certain kids do not develop sensory integration normally. Now, when they do not develop sensory integration normally, they develop what is called as sensory integration dysfunction. So Jean Ayers was an occupational therapist who first identified sensory integration dysfunction, and in fact, she has had an immense um, uh, she's really changed the way autism is seen or sensory integration is seen, because she came up with this particular uh, theory, which is now very rightly known as sensory integration therapy. Okay, so there are different sensory integration dysfunctions. Just to name a few, there is something called sensory modulation problem. Whenever we are um, see, sensory integration, whenever you are functioning, okay, the vestibular system, the proprioceptive system, the tactile system, all these systems, they keep on sending information to the brain. Let us take the example of you sitting on the giant wheel. There are a few of you who are scared of sitting on a giant wheel, whereas others are not scared, and still others are, they would just not sit on the giant wheel at all. Now, what is the difference between all of you? There is a particular thing called threshold. Okay, so whenever the giant wheel starts moving, there the vestibular system starts picking up the movement. Whenever it reaches a particular level, which is the threshold, the brain gets a signal saying that, okay, now I'm scared. Now, in certain people, this threshold is here, whereas in others, the threshold is here. So people who are scared easily on sitting on a wheel, on a giant wheel, their threshold is low, whereas people who are not scared, their threshold is high. In between, this is called the arousal level or band of optimal arousal. So all of us who are not having any sensory integration dysfunction fall between this particular. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay, fine. So we were talking about sensory modulation process or sensory modulation problem. Whenever there is any sensory input, we react in a particular way. So if somebody touches you or tickles you, you may not feel or you may react in a particular way. But if somebody tickles you more, maybe you will react more. So there is a sensory input and there is a reaction. All of us, we try to modulate this particular reaction. We know how much to react to. If there is a problem with the sensory modulation, as we call, then the person has difficulty reacting to the stimulus accordingly. So a stimulus which otherwise will not cause um, uh, anxiety, this particular child may start feeling anxious about it. To explain it in other ways, there is something called hyporesponsiveness and hyperresponsiveness. Okay, hyporesponsiveness or hyperresponsiveness. Hyporesponsiveness is underreacting, and hyperresponsiveness is overreacting. So kids who have um, difficulty with hyporesponsiveness will not pick up the sensory input. So a child who sits on a giant wheel, and who is not scared, whereas all his other brothers of the same age, or the batchmates of the same age, they are scared, but he is not scared. Probably he is underreacting or hyper responsive. On the other hand, there are kids who are hyper responsive, or they overreact to this particular sensory system. Now, these are the kids who, with even a minor or hardly any movement, these are the kids who will start showing anxiety. Okay, so to summarize the sensory modulation thing, the tendency to generate responses that are appropriately graded in relation to incoming sensory stimuli rather than underreacting or overreacting to them. Now, there is a continuum of sensory responsivity with hyposensitivity at one end and hypersensitivity at the other. And then there is an optimal arousal of level of arousal which lies in the center of this continuum. These are the sensory modulation disorder which we just said. Sensory over responsivity, that is too much information coming in. Sensory under responsivity, that is information comes in but not responsive to it. Sensory registration problem, that is frequently fails to attend to or register relevant environmental stimuli. And sensory seeking or craving, which needs, wherein the child needs more and more of the sensory input. This is the other categorization based on current research. We won't go into the details of it. Now, how to identify if there are sensory integration problems among children? Okay, so the child is either oversensitive or undersensitive to touch, movement, sights, or sounds. So, if the child is oversensitive to touch, he may not like um, certain textures, so he may not like certain clothing, he may not like the tags of his t-shirt. He would give you a tough time while having a haircut or cutting his nails. Okay, if the child is having vestibular hypersensitivity, he will not allow you to be lifted up and moved around. He is a child who would not want to sit on a swing. He would not want to sit on merry-go-rounds. Okay. If the child is having oversensitivity or hypersensitivity towards sight, he is a child who would close his eyes whenever there are bright lights. Especially when he goes out in sunlight, he would try to close down his eyes, or he will look down. Okay. A child with auditory hypersensitivity is a child who would keep his hands on his ears the moment he listens to sounds like a cooker, or a railway engine, or the drilling machine sound. So these are the kids who are oversensitive or hyper responsive to these particular sensory systems. A child who is hypersensitive to touch is also called to be is also known to be tactile defensive. Okay, a child who is hypersensitive to vestibular input is also known as having gravitational insecurity. Now, on the other hand, there would be children who are under responsive or hyper responsive to these particular sensory systems. So if a child is not able to pick up food which is around his mouth, and he does not register that there is food around his mouth, he is probably hypo responsive or under responsive. A child who is not scared while sitting on a giant wheel or on amusement rides is probably having hypo-responsiveness as far as the vestibular system is concerned, so forth and so on. Okay. Then again, children who have sensory processing disorders will have difficulty with motor coordination. So their gross motor and fine motor coordination would be affected. Their activity level would be unusually high or low. So that is, this child would either be hyperactive or he would be hypoactive. He would look very dull, very clumsy. There would be poor organization of behavior. He would not understand the timing part, whether he has to go to school now, he has to do things fast, he has to do things in a certain time period. So these are the things he will not understand. Of course, there would be delays in speech and language development, poor self-concept, difficulties in doing his daily activities, difficulties at school. That is, he may have difficulties reading, writing, understanding what is being taught in school, and the child may also exhibit challenging behaviors. Further, the child may throw temper tantrums. So you may not realize that why this particular child is throwing a temper tantrum. Probably he is throwing a temper tantrum because the t-shirt which you have asked him to wear is making him feeling hypersensitive. May not understand the sense of humor. He may not understand sarcasm. He will, he may not be able to regulate himself as far as the emotions are concerned. So he would either keep crying for no reason, or he may cry uh, even when the matter is not so big that he has to cry so much. Or he may not show emotions, as in when the parent comes in, he may not go and hug the parent, or he may not understand that, I feel sad, I feel bad, or I feel happy. He may not be able to express his happiness, his sadness to the parents. Generally, these children are uncooperative and, yeah, anxious, poor self-confidence and self-esteem, avoids eye contact, or maybe overly affectionate, cannot understand the body language, that is non-verbal communication of this child is affected, and plus he may not be able to pick up even the non-verbal signs which we generally use while socializing. So now sensory integration is the treatment which is primarily given by the occupational therapist. There are a few principles of sensory integration treatment which you should know. That sensory integration treatment, because there are parents who go for sessions and then they come back to us, and when we ask them what did they do in the sessions, the things which they tell us, it makes us understand that probably the child was not getting sensory integration. Okay, so all parents should understand what is a sensory integration session. So wherever you are going, as a parent, it is your right to see the session. So you should be able to see the session, whatever is happening. Okay. Generally, many therapists prefer that the parent is not inside, or at times they may ask the parent to be inside in the therapy session, but sit without interfering in the therapy session. If the parent is not inside, then the parent should be able to see whatever is happening in the session through the glass, through transparent glass, or on the screen wherein you can see whatever is happening in the therapy session. Okay, so how does a normal or a regular sensory integration session look like? A regular sensory integration system will look as if the therapist is playing with the child. So if you see that the therapist is trying to control the child too much, probably it's not going well, because sensory integration is child directed. The child directs what he needs, what are the sensory systems he wants to work upon. So there's a basic difference between sensory integration approach and behavioral approach. So if a child comes in a therapy session and if he goes on the swing, okay, a 7-year-old child comes inside the therapy session and goes on the swing and keeps swinging. Basically, the parents' complaint was that the child does not sit in one place, is not attentive, and that is the reason why he is coming for this particular session. Okay, so if he's going on the swing, a sensory integration approach would allow the child to be on the swing. He will not insist that you have to sit down and start paying attention. Okay, what we would try to do is we will allow the child to go on the swing. We may postulate that probably he is seeking vestibular system or vestibular sensory input. We may create the environment in such a way that the child gets to perform or exhibit an adaptive response. So on the swing itself, we will see to it that the child does what we call is an adaptive response, a purposeful activity. However, in a behavioral approach, we may not allow the child to go on the swing. Instead, we may ask him to sit down and maybe give some positive or negative reinforcement so that he continues sitting. So again, there is a basic difference between sensory integration approach and behavioral approach. A sensory integration approach is child directed. Once the child comes in, he directs what sensory system he wants to be worked upon on that particular day. Now it is the therapist's expertise to be attentive and to pick up what exactly the child needs and start arranging the environment in such a way that he starts getting the sensory input what he needs. Okay. It depends on the child's inner drive. Inner drive is an important concept in human development, because whatever we do, it is primarily because of our inner drive. See, as the child is growing up, a 10-month-old child who is trying to stand up for the first time, he tries to get up, he falls down. Okay, again he tries to get up, again he falls down. He keeps on doing it again and again. Why is he doing that? Why is he trying to stand? Because he has been falling again and again, and he's getting whatever he wants because the parents are giving him whatever he wants wherever he's sitting. But the child keeps on getting up, trying to move around, because all of us have an innate drive, an inner drive to master the environment. That is, the child wants to get up and stand because probably he wants to reach at the remote or the mobile, which is generally kept on the table, and he is not able to reach when he is sitting down, or a fancy toy which is kept on the table at the table height. So once he tries to get that toy, he has mastered the environment and now he can get it. Similarly, when you are talking about sensory integration, there is an inner drive to work upon these sensory systems in such a way that development takes place. We as therapists and you as parents should be aware that we are tapping the inner drive of the child. Adaptive response, I've already told you that sensory integration is not just about giving a sensory input. So if you are giving your child swinging, that is not sensory integration, because that is not creating an adaptive response. Only when the child is on the swing and he does a purposeful activity which is of the just right challenge will you call it a sensory integration session or a sensory integration activity. And what do you mean by a just right challenge? A challenge which is neither too difficult that the child will not attempt, nor too easy that the child will feel bored. So that is the just right challenge. So in a therapy session, in a sensory integration session, the therapist keeps on working to give the child a just right challenge. So if the child is on the swing, on the platform swing, he will try to place another swing next to it uh, and motivate or tell the child that okay, probably he can go from this platform swing to this other moving swing. Now, going from one moving surface to another unstable surface is something which the child may want to do because there is an inner drive to master the environment. So, and he may do it. And once he does this, he gets that reinforcement which is within, that yes, I could do it. Once he gets this in his mind, in his brain, we have we have we have moved up as far as sensory integration is concerned. So in sensory integration, mostly we don't give an external reinforcer. The reinforcer is comes from within the child when he feels that yes, he has been able to achieve a particular challenge by performing an adaptive response. So now these are a few of the activities which you will see the child doing during a sensory integration session. So the child is walking on the balance beam. Okay, this is a flexion disc, and the child is supposed to put certain shapes in that, um, in those specific square, circle, triangle, rectangle pieces. This is a platform swing. The child is moving, and she is supposed to put the ball in the box, considering the time and the speed and the movement of the swing. Okay, here I am trying to, the child is on a therapy ball, and I am trying to give him lateral movements. So he picks up the shape from the right hand side and tries to maintain his balance and put it on the left hand side. So now all these activities which we are doing, it is primarily to work on the vestibular proprioceptive system. Here again is a scooter board, and the child is in this particular posture, which is helping him to develop the vestibular proprioceptive system. A trampoline, generally it is not just the trampoline. We give the child to catch a few number of catches or some similar activity. Okay, again the child is prone on the ball. This is a this is a peanut ball. Bolster swing. This is a rectangular bolster swing. The child was trying to take the clip from one side and put it on the other side, and the swing was moving. Okay, the child is trying to climb up, and he had to get a particular toy which was kept up. Again, here the child is on the platform swing, and the therapist was giving him specific letters to be put on the board. Something similar. Here the child is on the platform swing, and he is trying to put the rings on the in the stand. So now if you can see, generally a sensory integration setup will have this suspended equipment. So at any given time, the child should have access to a suspended platform swing, a suspended bolster swing, flexion disc, um, um, flexion disc, or something to climb up, or the trampoline which you can see. So the child comes in, and not all children will tell you I want this, because many a times our children with autism, they have speech impairment, communication impairment, so they may not tell you. They may just go there for a few seconds and then move on, and if you have missed out on that thing, whatever he wants, probably you missed out on a very crucial part of the session. It's group therapy. So now what can parents do at home? Okay, now this is the most important thing, and I'm sure most of you are here to listen to this. Just to just to summarize, so far whatever we have done is, we are saying that sensory integration is integration of the senses by putting it to use. So we are saying that there is sensory input to the brain, there is processing, and there is use. So this is sensory integration. It's a normal process. It occurs in all of us. Most important in the early childhood development. Some children do not develop it properly, and then they are called as having sensory integration dysfunction. There are 5 senses which we are aware of, and 2 senses, that is vestibular and proprioceptive, which are along with the tactile sensation. These are the foundational sensory systems. Okay? And then we spoke about what is sensory integration therapy. We have spoken about how a sensory integration session looks like. Okay? Now let us see what as parents you can do at home. Now before we start, there are a few things which you need to understand. Okay? Now, when we are talking to you as parents, we are looking at you as partners for giving therapy. If you think that by getting your child for therapy twice a week, or in at times even intensive 4 times or 5 times a week. That is all that is needed. I'm sorry, probably you got it wrong. Therapy is supposed to be continued throughout the child's waking hours. The therapist will see the child only for 45 minutes, but you are with the kid throughout his waking hours, and in fact even during his sleep. This is the time which you have to keep working on. Now, many times you are flummoxed with uh, a behavior which your child exhibits. So, say there is a kid who bangs her head, or there is another kid who pinches her mother. Okay, so now both these kids, when you are looking at them, first and foremost you'll have to figure out what is this behavior. So is it a behavior based on sensory integration dysfunction, or is it a learned behavior? Is the child doing it because he or she has learned it in a way that it is giving the child some escape, or something that he or she was looking at, okay, or whether the child is unwell. So this particular child who was scratching or pinching the mother, first we have to figure out why is he doing that. So if once in fact yesterday itself this parent was talking to me, and they told me that yes, the child is pinching the parent, and I asked them whom does he pinch. So the parent said it's only the mother, not everybody else. So now once they said that, I probably started thinking, oh, mostly it is not sensory integration. Okay, because if the child is able to discreetly, or if the child is able to discriminate, or if the child is able to understand with whom he can and with whom he cannot do this, probably it is a behavioral thing. On further investigation, it was learned that the child was doing this only to the mother, not to the grandmother, not to the father. With them he is absolutely all right, and he has been doing it with the mother because the mother has allowed him to do this. And whenever he does this thing, he can get away from the mother's study time. So this is not sensory integration, this is probably behavioral. Okay, the mother will have to use a positive or a negative reinforcement strategy with this particular child. The other kid, a girl, she was banging her head. Okay, and the mother was feeling that probably it is behavioral. But then when we investigated it further, the child did not have speech, her communication was very poor, and she used to do that only when somebody tried to touch her. Okay, now when I got this particular information, I started wondering, is it that the child is hyper responsive to the tactile stimulus, or is it that the child is having tactile defensiveness? Now, if the child has tactile defensiveness, that means whenever somebody tries to touch the child, she overreacts. Her sensory system overreacts. She does not like it. She's not able to speak or communicate, trying to, she cannot tell that, okay, please don't do this, I don't like it. The child will respond by either banging the head or scratching or doing something like this. Okay, so now in this case it was a sensory integration issue. It will require a sensory integration approach. Still, the third thing is, the child may behave in a certain way because probably he's having stomach ache, or he's unwell, cough, cold. So again, that part you should be very clear with. You should also be aware that environment makes a lot of difference, because if the child's teacher is telling you that the child does not behave in a certain way at school, and if you feel that no, but at home the child does it so well, uh, it's not that the teacher is lying or the teacher is overreacting, because context or where the child is makes a lot of difference. So the child will behave differently in a clinic setting, at home, at school, and during play. And you will have to be very clear where the child is behaving, how the child is behaving, what is the context. Is it the place, is it the people around that is causing him to behave in this particular way? uh, Many a times, with all good intentions, parents keep on giving tips to other parents that, oh, even my child had this particular issue, why don't you try this? This is something which you should not do, you should not tell, and you should not listen, because each child is different. Whatever has worked for a particular child may not work for your child. Okay, it is always better, it is always good to speak to your occupational therapist and then figure out what works for your child. Okay, do not force your child to do anything. So if you're using a sensory integration approach, no forcing. The child should not be crying while you are giving him brushing or some tactile input. Establish predictability and consistency. Let the child know what he is supposed to expect next. So let there be a predictable sequence of events that occur in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. And let there be consistency about it. Inform the child what he is supposed to expect next. This helps in transition. Create a calm atmosphere. Attend to appropriate behaviors. Be very vigilant about behaviors and which behaviors you would want to attend to and which behaviors you would want to therapeutically ignore. Okay, there's something called therapeutic ignoring. Make therapeutic use of self. So you have to use your body language, your speech, your volume, the modulation of your speech depending on what your child's need is. So if your child is a hyperactive child and if you want him to get things done, you cannot be hyper like, oh, come on, very good, let's do it, come on, very good, very good. That's not good. Okay, because this may further increases hyperactivity. Instead, you can just say, oh, very good, you are doing good, good, come on, let's do it one more time. So this is therapeutic use of self. You're using your self, your body language, your speech, your eye contact therapeutically. You should always use the do statements rather than don't do it, because when you say, okay, don't write on the walls, and you'll have to tell him, write on the paper. Or when you say don't do this, the child may ask, okay, then do what? You should always give him an alternative. Instead of saying don't do this, you say instead of this you can do this. Okay? Minimize aversive events. If you know that an aversive event is going to occur, you prevent it. If you know when the neighboring kid comes into the house, there is something that goes wrong, you be vigilant. You try to avoid those things. Share control with the child. Let the child feel that even he has control over the things which are around. The first sessions, when the kid comes to me and the initial few sessions, I tell the parent that you would feel that I am very passive. In fact, I may start my session by sitting very far away from the kid and let allow the child to move around, explore things, pick up things, climb up on things, etc. Now, this is because I want the child to feel that he has control over this place. Likewise, even you at home should share the control with the child. Rather than telling him, do this, you tell him, let us do this. Or can we do this together? That's a better way of saying it. Provide an environment that promotes successful engagement. Make an extra effort to understand what your child is trying to communicate. Now, you will have to be very, very vigilant to figure out what exactly your child wants to tell you. If the child is having speech and communication issues, he would not be able to tell you what he wants. We will have to make that extra effort. So if the child is not able to communicate properly, you will have to take the onus on you. Okay, probably I am failing in understanding him. Clarify expectations. Be very clear about what you want. And be concrete about it. Don't be abstract. So when you are going for a birthday party, if you say, okay, now you're going for a birthday party, you better be good. Now, be good is an abstract idea. You'll have to tell him, what do you mean by be good? By being good. You'll have to tell him in a concrete way, okay, we are going for a birthday party. You should sit in one place. You should not put fingers in the cake and you should not grab the birthday boy's gifts. Now he knows exactly what he's supposed to do at the birthday party. So clarify your expectations, let it be concrete and not abstract ideas. Match demands to abilities. Understand where your child's what your child's current ability is and accordingly put the demand to him. If your child is having difficulty sitting and understanding the concept of writing, the purpose of writing, there is no point in forcing him to write. Probably you'll have to start something else. Probably you'll have to start the pre-writing skills, work on them, and then once his ability improves, then bring about writing. Alternate preferred and non-preferred activities. Okay. This is the term which you have which you must have heard, sensory diet. When we are talking about sensory diet, we are definitely not talking about food. Here we are talking about a diet, a sensory diet, wherein you provide your child with different types of sensory input as they need it throughout the day, so that they can function to their full potential. So primarily it means that you would be giving your child sensory activities, which would help him either to calm down or be alert or start functioning in the way we want him to function. What I'll do is, see, sensory diet is a very vast topic. Uh, Whatever I tell you, it's just going to be, these are just guiding principles, and just to give you an idea. At the end of this, you have to go to your occupational therapist and ask, what are the sensory diet activities, what is the sensory diet I need to do with my child. However, here I'll be mentioning a few alerting activities and a few calming activities. So alerting movement activities, any activity and which is fast, random, would be an rather than slow, linear, rhythmic, would be an alerting activity. So if the child is on the swing, a fast, random moving swing would bring the child up, will bring his arousal level up, or will improve his alertness. So activities like jumping on a trampoline or on a bed or on a couch would help. How many times? It will vary from child to child. So I'm not giving you a specific number, 10 times, 20 times. This you'll have to figure out, you'll have to judge or speak to your occupational therapist. Bouncing while sitting on a therapy ball, if the child is bouncing fast, then that will alert the child. Dancing on fast beat songs, these stop go games are helpful. Swinging fast holding a trapeze, this is a very good activity. You get a trapeze, you will get it on these various sites, wherein there is a rod and there are strings attached to it which can be put to the ceiling through a S hook. Now you can ask the child to hold this trapeze and swing. Now if you want to improve the child's arousal level, this swing has to be fast. Now you just cannot give him swinging, because I told you it's not only about the sensory input but the adaptive response as well. So if you are giving the child swinging using a trapeze, you tell him that after 5 counts he is supposed to jump on a designated specific mat, maybe a doormat which is kept down. So he swings 1, 2, 3 and jump. So he is supposed to jump on the mat. That becomes an adaptive response. So alerting sound activities, loud, fast songs, auditory games would really help. So dance and action songs with fast-paced music. In fact, just the previous day, we were having a group therapy session and everybody was a bit low. So we started a very catchy Bollywood song and all of us started dancing. We brought their alertness level high, and then once they were to the optimal level, we stopped the song and started working on other things which we had planned. Alerting tactile activities, cooler temperatures will are alerting. So a cool AC is would be alerting. Light touch instead of deep pressure would be alerting, and vibrating toys. Alerting oral activities, any crunchy snack, apples, carrots, or the chips. Per se, chips are not good, but then chips, the crunchy snacks, these are alerting oral activities. Cold drinks would be alerting. Sour foods would be alerting. Oral vibrator again would be alerting. Peppermint and or lemon scents are supposed to be alerting olfactory senses. Alerting visual activities, bright lights, contrasting lights, Bright colored mats or worksheets if the child's arousal level is low and if you want to work on him as far as academics is concerned. Bold fonts on the worksheets, flashlights or light up toys. Now let us talk about calming sensory activities. So again, it would be slow, linear, predictable, rhythmic movements. So if the child is on the swing, it would be this to and fro movement, and we would ask the child to do a purposeful activity or an adaptive response. The way you were seeing how the child was throwing balls in that bucket, or the other child who was standing on the platform swing and trying to put the ring in the stand, or rolling forward and backward over a therapy ball. You can ask the child to lie on his stomach on the ball, on the therapy ball, and rhythmically move the child to and fro, forward and backward. Rocking chair, rocking horse, gentle bouncing on the therapy ball. So bouncing we used it for alerting also, and we can use it for calming as well. Okay, now calming proprioceptive activities. Proprioceptive activities generally have an organizing effect, have a calming effect. So if your child is hyperactive, these are the activities which would calm him down. Proprioceptive activities are activities wherein you have to use force, wherein you have to use some strength. So any pushing, any pulling activity would have a calming effect. But if you are playing pushing activity with your child, I told you to use therapeutic use of self. So instead of making it very playful and trying, okay, let's push, you can just say, okay, let's push and come on, let's do it. Slow and steady. Okay. Crawling through a tunnel is a good activity. If you don't have a tunnel, you can make one out of your dining table chairs. You can just keep them in a sequence and the child goes below it. Chair armrest push-ups are very helpful. Hanging to a pull-up bar, you get these pull-up bars which are suction based. So you can put it in your bedroom door frame, tighten it because you don't have to screw it, and just let it hang there. The child can go there and hang there, try to pull himself up, do whatever he wants to do, because that is going to have a calming effect. Carry heavy bags or covers of bedsheets. So at night, if he is supposed to get the bedsheets from the inner room to the outer room, give him that activity that will calm him down. Pushing pulling activities, then you can wrap the child tightly in a blanket and ask him to wriggle out of it. Weighted blankets, vests, lap pads can be given. Now these can be done at home as well. Pressure with bean bag, you can ask the child to stay down and keep the bean bag on him, or put your pressure on him, and you can start taking nursery rhymes or talk to the child. That is a very good activity. Or you can play sandwich. You can tell the child, okay, I'm putting sand, let's make a sandwich, and you can put butter and cheese or whatever, and the child lies in between, and then the other bread you can put another pillow on top of the child. Lycra swing is very good, because if the lycra swing is a swing wherein when the child, when he's inside the lycra swing and if he's moving, there is pressure on all the sides whichever limb he moves. Weighted cups and weighted toys. So there are certain calming sound activities which you can use. Calming tactile activities, it has to be a deep pressure. A bear hug, a squeeze would help. Swimming is very good. Calming oral activities, you can use chewy tubes or chewing the hard thick end of a carrot. Calming olfactory senses like lavender, rose and vanilla are supposed to have a calming effect. You can put these scents in a bottle, put a lid to it which has like how you have for salt, and then the child can keep on smelling it. It will calm him further. Calming visual activities, you can have a tent in your house which is slightly darker. So whenever the child feels too hyper sensitive to the sensory systems around, he can just go there and have his time out. So to summarize, there are 7 senses, not 5. Sensory integration is the ability to organize sensory information for use. Sensory integration dysfunction can affect the child's development. parents should learn to analyze the child's behavior and then discuss with the occupational therapist for tailor-made intervention. Uh, Please don't copy these activities which we just discussed. This was just to give you a brief idea about what needs to be done. A sensory diet provides the needed sensory input throughout the day, and then this lecture is intended to give parents an overview. Specific home program for your child has to be started only after consulting your child's occupational therapist. Yep, so this is my daughter. Now what we'll do is we'll just see if there are any questions. Okay, so Deborah from New York is asking if we could get the link and contact of the doctor. I think you can connect with Autism Connect and they would help you to get in touch with me. But my email ID is drssushant@gmail.com. So it is Dr. S. Sushant at gmail.com. And my number is 98197 You can contact me on WhatsApp. I repeat, 98197 Deborah. Okay. One and hypo in other behavior. So Shilpa is asking in one and hypo in other behavior, what all we can do at home if kid is understimulated to olfactory senses. Okay, so primarily what I understood is she's asking, can the child be hypo-responsive in one sensory system and hyper-responsive in another? Yes, the child can be hypo-responsive. So a child can be having tactile defensiveness in one, that is hyper-responsiveness as far as the tactile system is concerned, and hypo-responsiveness as far as the vestibular system is concerned. Olfactory senses I just told you. How to tackle, Shilpa again is asking um, how to tackle hypersensitivity to hair cutting and nail cutting. Okay, so hypersensitivity to nail cutting or hair cutting is primarily because of the child's tactile defensiveness. Now, first and foremost, as I told you, you will have to figure out what this behavior is. Is it because of his sensor integration dysfunction, or is it because the child is very hyperactive and he does not want to sit in that barber's chair, or is it that the child is having auditory hyperresponsivity? That is, he does not like the sound of the scissors or that machine which they use. So first and foremost, you'll have to figure out what exactly is the cause of the child not allowing you to use hair cutting. The second thing is when we start working on his tactile sensitivity overall, this would decrease. However, in the meantime, what you can do is you can apply a moisturizing cream on the open surface so that it becomes slightly manageable for the child. You can start with telling him that, okay, this is how we are going to do it. Bring some predictability, try to bring some control by saying at home you can cut um, some amount of hair and tell him, okay, we are cutting only this much and then we are taking it off, so that only that much hair when it falls on his skin, and if he is able to tolerate that, gradually you can start telling him that or start training him to accept more and more of this hair cutting. So that should help. um, okay. uh, Keep on touching his private. How to stop this? Thanks. So Pooja is asking, my son keeps on touching his private part. How to stop this? Also, he likes mouthing plastic stuff. Please suggest. Okay, as far as the touching private part is concerned, uh, one of the things is that it is normal for kids to touch their private parts to some extent. Okay. However, if the child is overdoing it, first and foremost, you find out whether he is having any infection there. So a starting point would be visiting your physician or pediatrician to rule out the infection part. Second, you check out the clothing. Is it that the clothing is irritating him? And third, you start telling him about when he can touch and when he cannot touch. So you can begin with giving him certain time in the day or certain place wherein he can touch his private part, and at other times he cannot touch. And this way you can go on increasing the time period wherein he is not touching the part. Uh, as far as mouthing plastic stuff is concerned, probably he's seeking that sensory um, input through mouth. You can start giving him different tastes, especially items which tastes are. That should help you. Again, these are just because I have not seen the kids. I may or may not be right or wrong about this. These are just guidelines. You please check out with your occupational therapist. 90% he is to hi sir. Okay, Ratna Priya is hello Ratna. She is saying my son always used to press or pull or touch others mouth. 90% he is doing only with ladies. Rarely he will do with his dad alone. No other gents. Used to press or pull or touch others mouth. So Ratna, just try to check out, is it the soft touch that he's seeking? And if he's seeking that soft touch, you give him tactile activities wherein he gets that type of a sensory input. A foam activities are very good. You can start with foam activities. You can start with clay activities. Give him clay activities and try to figure out if that is working. Shilpa is saying, my child continuously grinds his teeth. How do I tackle this behavior? Now, grinding of teeth is generally seen when the child is seeking proprioceptive input. If you try grinding your teeth, you will understand the amount of force or the sensation which we feel within ourselves. What you can do is overall start working on giving him proprioceptive activities. So, jumping, crawling, all those activities which I told you, climbing up, climbing on the jungle gym. These are the activities which will start satisfying his proprioceptive seeking. As far as grinding teeth is concerned, chewy tubes can be given, or the lower part of a hard carrot. That chewing is helpful. And Ratna again is asking, he used to kiss me a lot, and also other ladies therapists. He will pull the cheeks of face near to his mouth, and he will start to kiss or um, keep his cheeks in their mouth, and will ask us to kiss always. How to overcome this? Also, he is just 3.6 years, but we can feel that he is doing this more. Okay, so he's doing it to ladies. Obviously, there is no sexual intent to it. He's just 3.6 years old. Again, it is the tactile part. So you can continue with the activities which I told you about foam and about clay. And you can start telling him the appropriateness and inappropriateness of this behavior. He's 3.6. If things fall in place, I think in the next 3 months this should start reducing. And don't reinforce this behavior, because a 3.5-year-old kid trying to kiss you is very cute. So tell all the therapists, tell everyone not to reinforce his behavior, not to say, oh, that is so sweet, we like you, and they should not reciprocate it. Let him understand that, okay, this is not the appropriate behavior and he is not supposed to do it. Okay, Pooja was not able to see the presentation. I'm sure Autism Connect will help you with the presentation if you can get it. Uh, Tanya Vedagiri is saying, my son, 5-year-old, screams when excited or when something's moving or any nerves. He is not talking much, very less words. He screams for everything. I'm sure you have your, because he's not able to regulate himself. He's having issues with self-regulation. You will have to go to an occupational therapist if you're not already going, because he is not able to regulate himself. Vestibular proprioceptive activities will help him to calm down. Okay. Hello sir, what's your view on RDI? My child is very audio sensitive. Sivagami is asking. Suggest some home program for the same. See, RDI has what I would suggest is you please check the evidence for RDI. Even if you just type RDI, you will start getting in Google Scholar itself. You will start getting the different articles on it. You please go through it, and I think you can take your own call about it, because there would be varying suggestions or interpretations and opinions about this particular thing. Okay, there are many questions. Can we take more? Can we take, because there are many questions. I, can we answer, or we have to stop? We can continue. Okay, we can continue. Avanish Srivastav needs the contact number. As I said it again, I am telling my contact number again. It is 98197 22846. 98197 22846. A better way to contact would be WhatsApp, and I'll be able to contact you back. Okay, what to do if child uses pressure while writing? That is what Bijal Dalal is asking. See, the child using a lot of pressure is because he is not getting adequate information from the sensors which are there in his joints. Then you can start helping him by improving this sensory input. Give him activities which are fine motor activities, like you can ask him to pick up beads with a clip and pass it to the other hand, which again has a bead, again has a clip. So he picks up the bead and puts it on the other side. Okay. Okay, so I am told that Autism Connect will be uploading the recording of the webinar by tomorrow. And for further assistance, you can mail to contact@autismconnect.com. So it is contact@autismconnect.com. Okay. Okay, so I am told that we are done with the time. There are many questions here. What I would suggest is, in fact, this is a very vast topic, and I'm sure there are many questions, and it was very difficult for me to uh, edit it and speak less, because on each of these things there is a lot which I can talk about. In fact, even the sensory diet activities, if you have noted, I have just spoken about alerting activities and calming effect activities, because anything more than this was beyond the scope of a 1 hour lecture. So what we'll do is, maybe at some other point of time when we are free, I am free and everybody else is free, we can have another one. And uh, okay, we can have another one, and in the meantime, I'll just see how, if I can take a few more questions. Okay. Yeah, so I'm starting from here. Quickly share contact details again. The child is biting the fingers and is. Now what I'll do is, I'll just summarize the queries so that I can answer as many as possible. Just give me 2 minutes. Okay, Vrinda Menon is asking, my son keeps on banging any kind of object in one hand to the palm of other hand. What to do? While eating, he doesn't touch food. Okay, no, this is Vrinda. Okay, so she's saying that her son keeps banging objects to her hand. So this is more of a stereotypical repetitive behavior, which looks like. See, whenever the child is having stereotypical repetitive behavior, if the child starts getting sensory integration sessions, even if you feel that the sensory integration session is not addressing it directly, however, if the therapist is working on his basic vestibular, proprioceptive and tactile systems, this will come down automatically. So stereotypical repetitive behavior comes down by sensory integration approach, for sure, that much I can tell you. So continue with your therapy. Does that- Okay, now I think I'll take just one or two. Okay. Avanish Srivastava is saying, you missed my number again. Okay, I'm just saying it for the last time. 9819722846, and Autism Connect, I suppose, will put up my details. Now you are saying his therapist says he has vestibular issues. Should we wait teaching him cycling without side wheels? Does he need time to be ready for this activity? He is 10 years old. Okay, cycling is an activity which is a sensory integration activity. What you do is you first see, as I told you in one of the principles, you match the child's ability and the demand you are making. So if your child is having vestibular issues, it means you'll have to first figure out whether the child is hypo responsive or hyper responsive. If he is hyper responsive, he will be afraid to sit on the cycle. You reduce the height of the seat, you add casters, let those two side wheels be there, and you give him as much support as possible. Maybe you can, in spite of he holding the handle, you hold him from behind just to make him feel that yes, he is in control, and first and foremost, bring down the seat of the child and move the cycle slowly. If he is hypo responsive, that is the opposite, that is at the other end, then you use this cycle and try to give him fast cycling. Maybe then you can push him, you can run with the cycle and push the cycle, and let him have a fast cycle. uh, what you should do is don't force the child, try to make it as playful as possible. uh, okay, now I'll take this last question. My 5-year kid behaves differently in school and at home. We can find out the reason for a different behavior in school and at home. Is it the environment or the people? How can we find out the reason for a different behavior in school and at home? Is it the environment or the people? Very interesting question, and I thank you for asking this question, Miss Ankita Jain. See, what happens is, as I have already mentioned, that the context of the behavior is very important. That means whenever there is a certain behavior, you don't just look at the behavior, you also look where the behavior is taking place, who are the people around it, around the child when this behavior is there, what time is it at a specific time, that does he exhibit this behavior in the evening but not in the morning, is it the place where he is sitting, etc. As far as school and home is concerned, see, home is an environment which can be controlled by you. the sound, the people around, the sensory system, everything can be controlled. School, that is not the case. That is the the real field where the child is supposed to perform. Now, the reasons may be many. If he is having tactile defensiveness or hypersensitivity to touch, you see to it that kids are not touching him. You see to it that it can be as simple as the child sitting behind him, his compass box keeps touching his back, and that agitates him, that irritates him. Or it may be the auditory input which is going on in the school, or it may be the very fact that he has to sit for so long. A better idea would be, again, you yourself try to analyze what exactly is happening. Is it the sitting that is a problem? Is it the sensory thing? Or is it that the child cannot sit for this long in the school? If he cannot sit for so long, at times the school allows the child to attend half the day, or the school also allows the child to give him breaks. Now these breaks again need to be very carefully given, because it should not happen that the child is purposely doing this to get away from the schooling part, and then he does these things purposefully to go out and have a round. This has to be judged very carefully. So there is no clear cut answer, but yes, the child would behave differently at home and at school. I think it's around 6:30. We'll stop here. And I thank all of you for attending this session. Now, because I'm sorry if I was not able to speak properly, or you are not able to understand me properly, because this is a webinar and it is difficult to speak to a camera. Probably if you were in front of me, things would have been simpler for all of us. However, webinar of course has its own advantages, that you could still attend this thing and we could connect with each other, you sitting in your house or wherever you are. So this is a nice thing. I again apologize if I was inaudible, or if there were any technical glitches. And if you think that this has been helpful, I would be really glad. Please understand that we are in this together. Please understand that a lot is expected from parents, and the first thing to do about helping your child is empowering yourself by knowledge. Knowledge is the key. Please attend workshops, please attend seminars, please attend lectures, ask questions to your professionals, your therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, psychologist, your developmental pediatrician, whoever you are attending to. uh, Google if you want, but it is, Google has a lot of information and not everything may be appropriate for your child. It is generally not a good idea to pick up ideas from another parent, because what worked for their kid may not work for your kid. And lastly, understand that sensory integration is a normal function, it is a normal phenomena, and it cannot be forced. Okay, I thank you. And Autism Connect will be uploading the recording of the webinar by tomorrow, as I have already told you. And for all further assistance, please contact or please email to contact@autismconnect.com. Thank you, and thank you, Autism Connect.